Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Haunted Hour podcast. I have Miranda from the Ghost Biker Explorations, paranormal investigator, artist, Harley writer, amazing paranormal investigator, and she just completed a 6-episode live series going to different haunted locations and doing investigations and allowing the audience or the viewers to participate in the investigations. So we got to sit down and talk about it, and she shared some evidence with me that's in this episode. And let's get right into it. Yesterday I lost my job. Yesterday I'm in a bar. Being broke, it really sucks. It does. And the rent's just too damn much. So I'm really excited to have you here because I watched all of your season 6 lives, and I've seen you previously do live ghost hunts. So as soon as I saw that you were going to be doing it, I was like, definitely committing my Tuesday nights to hanging out with you. And so I have to say my favorite was the poker playing with the spirits. I thought that showed so many different things.
Yes.
But so for those who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick little like who you are and what you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for having me on tonight, Dee Dee. So my name is Miranda. I'm known as the Ghost Biker, and I travel around the country on my motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations, and I highlight them on my web series, Ghost Biker Explorations. I've been investigating the paranormal for just under 15 years now, but I've been doing Ghost Biker for 6. And so we just literally wrapped up season 6 this past week, which, as Dee Dee had mentioned there at the start of the show, that we did something a little bit different this season and did every single episode live. So it was really exciting to be able to make this a very interactive season, especially for season 6. And I was honestly blown away by the response that we got from doing this.
Yeah, I loved being on the side and watching and being able to kind of give input, ask questions, and then interact with the other people who were watching as well. It was like a really fun thing. It actually felt like we were there. Like, I guess in
Good.
spirit, we really were there connecting with the
Yeah.
spirits as well. It was kind of amazing, you
It it
know?
it honestly was, because in looking at some of this, I love to try different experiments, and we'll talk about some of these here in the show, but that was the cool thing about doing this season live was, the original idea was to do essentially a 2-hour live with 2 hours of investigating without being live that night. But each of these episodes, we had so much activity and so much interaction during these episodes that several of them, especially the one that you mentioned with the poker game from Hey Good Meal, that was a 4.5-hour live. And so the way I see it, after I did the first episode, I thought, you know what? As long as people are watching and interacting, and as long as the spirits are being active and kind of working with all of us on this, I'm just going to stay on as long as it'll allow me to stay on, as long as I've got battery juice and
Yeah.
and everything. And it was cool to go back. I'm still actually going back and reviewing evidence and reviewing the footage, but I was finding that people, that the spirits were not only interacting with what we were doing inside the location, but there were several times that they clearly knew what the questions they were asking.
Yeah.
And so that was really fascinating to me, to be able to put the season together like this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's mind blowing to me too. It's like, what does that even mean? So like you can literally connect with a spirit. I mean,
Mhm.
we've all kind of thought that one way or another, you seem to connect like online and you do it with people, right? So we connect
Yeah,
online, but I mean, it really does seem to happen. And I don't even
absolutely.
know how or, what that means, but I I really enjoyed it, like I said. And so I'm really excited to show some clips and talk
Yes.
about what went on. And so we're going to start off by showing the uh, the promo video.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so, let me get this queued up here, on the promo. Like I said, I wanted to do something just a little bit different this season, and as you had said earlier, I'd have done lives in the past, and I did a lot more lives before I went solo, and so I was kind of keeping a lot of the locations secret each season, and that's why I wouldn't typically do a live there. And because I am a solo investigator, I had to do the investigation, and then I would spend a lot of my time going through and reviewing evidence and then
Yeah.
editing and putting the episodes together. And so this season, I had a lot of things going on, everything from a lot of family things that I kind of had to step away and take care of. And then also moving, I completely moved to a new house. And then we also expanded the business at the historic Scott County Jail and added historic rugby. And
Yeah.
so a lot of things going on that didn't allow me to be able to go and do the editing and go through all the evidence. So I thought, rather than postponing the season, I'm like, I'm going to go back to my original roots and do a live, because every now and then I would do lives, like from
Yeah.
St. Albans and stuff, and they got a lot of interaction. And so, like I said, I was blown away. I mean, one of the videos, the very last one that we did, we had over 300 people watching the live
Wow.
video at one time. I've
That's
never had
awesome.
that many. And
No.
by the time the live was over, it had been viewed 12,000 times.
Wow.
And this week, so it's been a week since we were live, 23,000 people have viewed the very last live. So each of the episodes have continued to climb in people who were interested. And another thing that I thought was really interesting as well was that I was having investigators watch. It wasn't just people who maybe were paranormal enthusiasts, but
Right.
investigators were watching.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me get the
That's really cool. Wow. Congratulations
thank
on
you.
that too.
Thank you. Yeah, I
That's
was,
not an
like I
easy
said,
thing to do.
no, no, and so it's really motivated me, and I really want to do, I'm gonna be doing a lot more lives, let's just put it
Yeah,
that way.
that's awesome.
Um, so I've got that, pulled up there, so
Okay.
let me get this. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and cue this up. We're doing something different this year with Ghost Biker Explorations Season 6. Every single episode of season 6 is going to be live. So, for me on that, it was one of those, because it was so different going and doing that as a live. I'm used to having all of my stuff put together and the seasons edited and just right as I was going into the season. So I was a little bit I felt a little unprepared,
Yeah.
and the goal was every Tuesday night I was going to be traveling, or every Tuesday traveling to a different location. And so we covered locations in Tennessee, in Kentucky, and then, well, I'll break it down a little more specific, in Rugby, Tennessee, in London, Kentucky, in Pickens, South Carolina, Appomattox, Virginia, and then back to Rockcastle County, Kentucky. And so, two of the locations were fairly far of a drive. One of them was 5.5 hours, and the other was
Mm.
4 hours. And so, I was able to get to these locations, and we kind of, I try to do a theme every season. Of course, this season the theme was not just live, but it was also either haunted villages, heritage museums, or old home places. And so I really lucked out that each of these locations I found did fit that criteria. And
Yeah.
in the beginning, I was thinking maybe I was a little optimistic in thinking that I could cover a village in a full 2 hours, because
Yeah.
Haygood Mill was 55 acres,
Yeah.
and, Rugby, same thing. So, I really learned a whole lot from this season, and several things. Probably the most important thing that I learned is just how forgiving the paranormal community and the watchers of these shows are, because you know, it was a very organic, authentic type thing doing these lives. And so whenever you go and you do a full scale investigation, say you're there all night. And so you say, I'm going to cover these places and I'm going to investigate these. So you investigate them, and then you take a little break, and then your equipment batteries drain. So you charge them.
Yeah.
It's a process. But when
Yeah.
you're live, and I hate dead air, it's
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I need to make sure this runs smoothly. And so I'm a planner, but I'm also the type of person, when I investigate, I don't plan too much. Like, I'll
Yeah.
plan my equipment and everything and plan techniques, but then I also go into a location and I let the location kind of tell me where I'm going to investigate and where I'm going to start.
Right.
And by taking it a step further and asking the audience to, hey, you tell me where you want me to start and what tools to use. Um, you can't account for internet issues. You can't account for camera issues, battery drain, all the issues that we have during these planned investigations. When it happens during a live, it's enough to kind of make you stop and be like, "Oh crap,"
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard.
how am I gonna troubleshoot this situation? And
Yeah.
so there were several occasions, especially on the first night, where we had some internet issues. Now, some of it could have been paranormal. We did
Mhm.
have some paranormal things happen at several locations, but some of them are just general. I'm in these rural areas, so
Yeah.
it's easy to have internet issues. Well, there was a couple times, at least on the first episode, my signal dropped. And so I had to leave the house that I was in and run over to my base camp, because I had it set up in the center of town, and pull myself back on.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, when I pulled myself back on, I was probably off for 2 or 3 minutes, and, there was still 38 people watching.
Yeah. Everybody
And so
waited.
I was like, "Okay, alright." And so then as things went on, I learned how to do the lives better by,
Yeah.
with the internet issues and stuff. And it got to the point to where if we dropped service, people stayed on. And I know by the end of the lives, when we ended, I had 132 people that was still on there when we ended.
Yeah.
And so to me, that just goes to show that the people are interested, they're immersed in it, they're involved, and they're very forgiving. They're really seeing the way an investigation happens,
Right.
with equipment not working and
Yeah.
everything happening. And so to me, that was a big learning thing, but that was probably the biggest thing that I learned, that it's like, calm down, and it
Yeah.
just let whatever happens happens. And
Right.
activity is not guaranteed, but with having so many people, I really feel like the collective energy really helped in some of these situations that we were in, because as a solo investigator, you go into these places, you got to be creative, and it's sometimes hard. You don't want to ask the same questions every
Yeah.
time and do the same experiments, but when you've got all these people on the live, you can really bounce off of a lot of people and get a
Yeah.
lot of really cool ideas from that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I love, because it like watching you guys do it, and then like somebody will say something that then
Mhm.
triggers a thought, and then you throw it out there and someone else sees that and it may trigger a second thought that just
Yes.
keeps growing. And I loved that too. Like you said, 138 people all investigating at the same time, but yet you're just you and a couple of different people that you were with sharing
Yeah.
the space. So even though the energy is there, it's still, I feel like that's like the perfect balance. It's not overwhelming, because if you had 138 people there, that would have been really bad. It would have been hard
Exactly.
to like know what's going on. But I had a question. Oh, so having other people direct you, because you've been doing this for a really long time, so you
Mhm.
have your like methods, you know what works for you and stuff. And so having other people, and then you invited us to be the
Mhm.
investigator, to say what you're going to do, so then you're
Yes.
kind of like stuck to do what we're asking you. And so did you feel like, did it make you uneasy? Did it help you? Was there anything, like what did that really do to you? I mean, it sounds like it helped you, but
It
still, was there a time where you were like, I really don't want to do that?
Well,
Yeah.
so that's a great question, because so normally when I'm doing investigations, I'm not doing them back to back to back. Now,
Yeah.
being the fact that I'm a co-owner of a location, I'm immersed in the paranormal on a daily basis. And it's hard. So, I mean, essentially I'm investigating mostly almost every weekend.
Yeah.
But it's hard to stay fresh, on things like that. So when I was traveling every week, I can remember the very last week that I traveled, and I traveled back up to Kentucky. And for a moment, it's just kind of like my mind was sort of like, okay, what am I going to do to keep this fresh and keep this interesting? But then I was kind of put at ease a little bit, because it's like, well, once I go in, and I was seeing this location for the first time. Now I had been to some
Yeah.
concerts there, but seeing it for the first time as an investigator. And so I knew I was going to give the tour, but I was kind of felt a little bit at ease, because I thought, you know what, that's okay. Because once I give the tour and explain a little bit, I know that everyone is going to have some suggestions. And
Right.
so if they can just put me in the right direction, um, I'm willing to try it, because you never know. And again, I kind of think that it had something to do with the collective energy
Yeah.
that really kind of uh, helped each of these investigations, because there was a lot of energy. And
Yeah.
then seeing the people interact, I mean, that just motivated me and boosted me, because it's kinda like, what are they gonna ask me to do? What are they gonna
Right.
suggest? Yeah, so
Yeah,
it
that's a
it
good
kinda
point.
helped me, yeah.
Yeah. So then do you feel like you got more paranormal activity doing it this way versus past investigations where you were just on your own?
Um, as far as in the moment, I do, but I've still gotta go back, because I think I probably have captured some interesting EVPs once I go back and
Yeah.
review recorders and audio.
Yeah.
In the moment, yes, I kind of do. So typically when I investigate, it's either just myself or it's myself and a camera person. Now at each of these locations, of course, at Rugby, it was just me and my camera person, Chris. And then the second week, it was myself, my camera person, Chris, and I had invited my best friend Tiffany to come on the investigation. We used to investigate a whole lot together back years ago, and she had been seen on several episodes. I especially like to do darker locations with her. But she had fallen ill a
Yeah.
few years ago, and so she had kind of stepped back from the paranormal, and so she was just feeling well enough to get back into it. So
Yep.
I was excited to bring her energy into it as well. And
Yeah.
then we also had Kelly, who was the tourism director that let us in. And then, of course, at each of the other locations, Hey Good Meal, Tiffany went with me to that one, and
Yeah.
she helped film for me. And we had Brandon, who was with Supernatural Inc., that led us into the location. And then, of course, last week's there in Renfro Valley, it was my friend Chris again. She
Mhm.
helped me with the camera. And then we had Lee, who is the operations manager.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to bring in these people who, for me, I'm very protective who I investigate with. I don't like a lot of people because I think it's harder to account for noise contamination and
Yeah.
all the other contaminations. But I also feel it brings something kind of special to the location because these spirits in these locations, they know these people who are in
Right.
there on a daily basis. So I really welcomed having them. Normally they may be on site, but out of sight. But in this situation, they were able to kind of help confirm things. They were also able, I think, to help bring some activity out because
Yeah.
it was, and another thing on these locations is the majority of these locations that I highlighted this season have either never been investigated before or they've been investigated very, very few times. And
Yeah.
so I'm talking on most of them. Probably the one that was investigated the most was Rugby. And,
Hmm.
we do the after dark tours and stuff there.
Okay.
But each one of these locations, even Rugby itself, has not been investigated any more than 15 times.
Wow.
And so with those, we really had to change up some of our techniques and stuff because we weren't really sure if the spirits knew how to utilize some of the pieces of equipment.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because you come in if somebody's from even like the 1800s, they're just going
Yeah.
to be like, I don't know what these people are doing.
So we had a lot of different challenges with this one of totally different technique styles for me, having more people doing large locations or covering a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And then also ones that were very immature in the amount of times that they had been investigated. So I think we just kind of had a great mix, and maybe that's why there were so many people watching, was the fact
Yeah.
that these are locations that it's like it's not your everyday run of the mill Waverly
Yeah.
Hills
Seen
or
it,
some of
done it.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
and I agree as a viewer too. They were locations that I may or may not ever get to since I'm in California. And I love the little small unheard locations and the fact that
Yes.
you gave the history and we could get a little, peek inside and then do the investigation. For me, that's like the perfect balance. I need to know a little bit more about the place and I like to hear kind of what paranormal experiences people have had. And then like the fact that I got to ask questions was amazing, because
Yeah.
I felt like all the spirits were very like I guess I'm into it and almost like excited to interact. Like I found a sense of humor with some of the spirits.
Yes.
It was really interesting and amazing. I have never seen anything like it, so it was really cool to watch. So we keep talking about, but I guess we could share some clips so people can get an
Yeah.
idea of
Yeah.
what we
So,
saw.
um, so, so what I'm doing with this season, other than just doing everything live, it's not a one and done type thing. So far, I investigated 5 different locations, and I spent anywhere a minimum of 2.5 hours live, but several of them were up to 4.5 hours. So I have the live. I had static cameras. I also did some investigating that was not on the live. So I'm inviting people to go back, watch all of these episodes and watch them very closely and send me if you hear or see or experience anything on the live. I'm inviting everyone to send me those timestamps because I'm going to re-release the episodes probably in February. And it's going to be like your typical Ghost Biker episode where I actually go and I show it during the daylight and really kind of give a tour, give the history like the typical episode, and then it will re-release the timestamps. I'll do shout outs to the people who sent in and who helped ask questions. And so we'll have that up there and then highlight the evidence that was captured during that, and then also highlight evidence that was captured when I wasn't doing live. And so So there'll be where you'll be able to find out more information about this. But
Yeah.
the first location was historic Rugby Village in Rugby, Tennessee. This is a Victorian utopian society that was established in 1880 by Thomas Hughes, and he was from England, and he had created a village as a village for second and third sons of England. And the theory was that he wanted to create a second Garden of Eden, and that
Yeah.
they were to come to the area and basically work the land, and they would be able to sustain that. But it didn't sustain due to many things, such as typhoid and
Mm.
a lot of fires in the area, but then also just the fact that these second sons weren't used to working. So it was it was a British village. They honestly didn't know how to work the land. They knew how to
Yeah.
have parties and play tennis and have tea time, but they didn't understand working the land. So it was really essentially doomed from the beginning.
Yeah.
But this first piece of evidence that I'm going to show, this is some that is actually clipped. We were in the schoolhouse investigating. The original schoolhouse was 3 stories. It had a schoolhouse on one level. It had a church that was on another level, and then on the upper level they had a meeting like the Masons or the Odd Fellows. The different social groups would meet in there. And so
Huh.
it did burn and was rebuilt in the early 1900s as 2 stories. And it was used at that point as a church and then as a school, and now currently is the museum. So I'm
Huh.
going to pull up this. And so what you're hearing is myself and Christy. We're in there. We have the tripwire set up as well as several other devices. And then we're using a Ovilus 5 for this. And you'll see what we got on the response there. So
I really like the tripwire. I don't have one of those, but I was like, that's pretty cool. It's I have to, where did you get that from?
that one came, I feel like it is, that was actually a Christmas present that Tiffany
Oh,
got me, but it
oh, nice.
comes from Canton Paranormal. It's out of Ohio. So it's
Okay.
Canton Paranormal Detectives, I believe. I'll send you the link to that, but
Okay.
I
Yeah. And I can
love
add
my
it. Yeah.
tripwire. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You let me know when that's ready.
There you go.
Okay.
What would you like to drink?
Tea? Are you serious? That totally said tea. Oh my God. I've got goosebumps. Oh my gosh. That was creepy.
I've got some.
That was creepy. I've seriously got goosebumps right now.
Hey, what kind of tea would you like? How do you like your tea?
You know what?
So several
Wow.
things happened in that. And like I said, that was, in going back and reviewing. And so I always try to take trigger items when I go. So I'd actually taken some tea with me, a couple tea bags. And 2 of the tea bags were sweet tea and one of them was Earl Grey. And so when I'm working with the Ovilus or any type of word bank, even the spirit box, I won't like hold up a tea bag and say, "Hey, does anybody want to have some tea with me?" I had held this up earlier and I was like, "I don't know if you can see or smell what I have, but would you like to have a cup of this with me?" To see if I could get them to say. I try not to lead in a direction
Right.
when I'm working with those
Yeah.
type of tools. And so I had asked that over at the Kingston Lyle house. And so when we went there into the schoolhouse, we asked the same question because we believed we had been talking with an 11-year-old kid there
Yeah.
inside the schoolhouse. And so to get that response on just the Ovilus 5 word bank
Yeah.
was pretty incredible.
That was cool. Yeah.
And
And
then,
then
of
there
course,
was a
the
guy in
EVP,
there
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember that. So, because I watched all of them, so now they're all meshing together for me. But I
Yeah.
remember that was the little girl, and she was responding like to the
Mhm.
questions. I mean, it was like everybody was like, wow, this is this is really something. But there was a
Yeah.
man as well. And now we hear
There
his
was.
voice.
and people was hearing that voice. That's the
Yeah.
best part is, whenever you hear it, one of the common it's almost laughable whenever you're doing investigation, people, "Do you hear that?" And but legit, it's cool to ask that whenever you got a group there because it's like, "Hey, did y'all hear that?"
Right.
And so another thing we had captured on there that was interesting was where we had the tripwire. They were on command running up and down the tripwire. And so I asked the question, would you mind running up there and show me how fast you can run? And as
Yeah.
soon as I ask that, tripwire goes off. So, and it just is like a trail going up and
Yeah.
down. So,
Yeah. Oh my
yeah.
God, amazing. That's exciting that you got those EVPs. I didn't even hear that. Or that was on the obelisk?
Yes,
Not the
those,
whisper, though.
no, the whisper was just a straight EVP.
Yeah.
The voices that you could hear with the tone and the inflection,
Uh,
those were off of the Obelisk 5.
yeah. So in that, and then there was the whisper voice too. That, oh wow, yeah. And I remember having people, hearing people, or reading people say that they had heard things, and I'm like, I didn't hear it, but I had like distractions in my house too. So that's
Yeah,
cool that I get to hear it now.
and one of the things that I always have on my episodes, I always have the disclaimer about using headphones
Yeah.
beforehand. And I wish I would have, because I was having to, I wanted to keep it as close to my season as normal with having the intro and having all of that. And so I wish I had put that in there to remind people, because sometimes I think that maybe there was some people that had the intention of just kind of tuning in for a little bit, but not the intention of staying. And
Yeah.
I had so many people that ended up staying and
Right.
participating. It was,
Yeah.
like I said, by the last night, it was hard to make sure we didn't miss comments as we were
Yeah.
going through. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no
So,
way you could not watch it and not want to participate, because I mean it was really interesting. I actually had it on my big TV,
yeah,
and then I
yeah.
had my phone to make comments because I wanted to, like,
Yes.
I could really take it all in. I saw a couple
Mhm.
people post that they had put it up on their TV.
Yes, I had a
So,
lot of people saying they were broadcasting it that way.
yeah.
So to kind of talk about a few of those, what I thought was when we pull up a few talking about a few of the techniques, we won't necessarily play the sound that the comments are there at the side. So on this is from episode 2, which was Heritage Hills Entertainment Center in London, Kentucky. And so what we did on this one, like I said, we had Christy who was manning the camera. We had Tiffany. She was also manning a camera in the comments. And then we had Kelly there. And so we were doing a 3-way Estes method. And so the way that the Heritage Hills Entertainment venue is, it is the old home place that's there in London, Kentucky. I totally, the man's name just totally just slipped my mind, but it was his old home place. And so this was actually one of the old barns that they had remodeled. And so you can see me there. I actually have the noise canceling headphones on, have it hooked up to my SB7. I have the blindfold on, and I'm sitting in front of that camera. It's really important to be sitting in front of the cameras when you're doing this because you never know if something will happen around you.
Yeah.
Kelly is sitting behind me, and she's actually holding the Obelisk 5. And so we are in the main museum room. Now, Christy is manning the camera that just says Ghost Biker, and the lights you see, that is a tripwire. And so she was actually in the foyer of the building. We were all in separate rooms. I had a double glass door that was closed, and so I could not hear Chris. Chris was reading the comments and asking the questions for the Estes session. Tiffany had gone into the auditorium, or the main event room where they would have the plays and all of that. And so she's got her eyes covered. She's got noise canceling headphones on, and she is listening to her SB7. And so she has 2 wooden double doors that separating her. Now, the thing that Chris did that I thought was brilliant with this is she had muted her or no, excuse me. Well, she had muted our mics. And so she could not hear the responses that we were given. So she was totally relying on the questions that y'all in the audience were asking. So there was no way to lead her, like you know how sometimes I might say
Yep.
the name Jacob, and so
Right.
then she might ask about Jacob or what have you. So she did not know any responses because she could not hear us, and of course we couldn't hear her. So several things were fascinating about this. One, we actually got a response that Chris had asked a question and I responded to it. We got the same thing right after I responded on the Ovilus. And then I don't know if Tiffany got it or if I can't remember if Tiffany said it or if I said it, but we got the same thing on the Ovilus. And then I had to stop because I got real dizzy all of a sudden toward the end. And so Tiffany had no idea to stop. And Dee Dee, I think you asked the question, can the spirits tell her to stop? And it wasn't but just before Chris had to go into the other room and stop her, Tiffany starts saying, stop it.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because it was like the spirits were telling her without Chris even
I know.
knowing. So
That's
I thought that was
amazing.
really
I've
cool.
got chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, and what I loved about this Estes session is, I love an Estes session anyways, and the
Me
Estes
too.
session was probably the most common requested experiment that we do. But what I loved about this one is the fact that we tried to completely isolate as much as possible. And you know, I don't really like it when people do Estes sessions in the same room. But even taking it a step further and the audience asking the questions, because there were times, and I can't wait to go through and see, but I firmly believe that several people in the audience had made connections because I feel like some of these questions were actually being answered before Chris asked the question,
Yeah,
which I
they
think was
were.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there was the Estes methods. I think there was 2 different locations where there was so much interaction between what you guys were saying and what the questions were that I mean, we were all just like taken by it because it was like, this is amazing. And there was the
Yeah.
2 different locations that went on that I can recall that it was just like really a lot.
Uh-huh. And I was trying to see so right here, I'm kind of skipping forward, but you can see in this video here where we quit and Chris walked in. So there's the double doors
Yeah.
that Chris had to go to get to Tiffany. And then she's going to shine it back. There's the double doors where we were inside of the museum room there. So, and of course, Tiffany is still going on there. And it's interesting because I see over here, you say, can the spirit tell Tiffany to stop? And it's crazy because there's no way Tiffany would even know that. And
No.
right after that, she starts saying stop. And so, so we were truly isolated here inside of these rooms, which I think just made it such an incredible experiment. And yes, it was different. The fact that we had a lot going on and a lot more people there than what people are used to when they see a Ghost Biker episode. But as far as being able to actually go in and do true paranormal experiments, I think that this season was just chock full of that.
Oh, definitely.
And so let's see here. The other one that I thought was an interesting experiment, and I will pull that one up here. It was the one that you had mentioned, and that was as your favorite. And honestly, in looking at it, I think this was probably one of my favorites because there was so much cool activity that
Yeah.
happened with this. And this was episode 3, and that was at Hey Good Meal, which I thought just in and of itself had such an interesting history when it came to the settlers who had settled in the area, as well as the fact that this was essentially a Native American trading post. And so there was a lot of Native activity. The this site, it has the mill on it. It also has the several cabins. One was a cabin that was made by slaves. The other was a cabin that was made by natives. And so these were moved from other areas onto this property. Now, the mill is in the original location. There's also original petroglyphs, which we didn't get to
Yeah.
show because we kept having battery drain. But there were original petroglyphs that are in
Yeah.
there that when you step on the rock itself, it's incredible. You can feel the vibrations and the energy
Yeah.
coming through your entire body. I've never
Wow.
felt anything like that.
Yeah.
So we did, again, a lot of different experiments with this one. But this particular cabin that we were in, the story behind it is that so in the back room, there's a hole in the floor where a ladder where you would climb up onto the second level. But there's blood stains on the cabin wall. And the reason that there's blood stains was that the story goes that one night there were a group of men playing cards here and they caught a guy cheating. And so when they caught him cheating, and actually I'm going to stop where this is playing because I'm getting just a little ahead of myself. But so where they were having this card game, they caught the guy cheating. And so the guy tried to escape by running up the ladder onto the second floor. And so essentially they ended up stabbing and gutting this man for cheating. And so there's still the blood on the wall, and the
Yeah.
energy is really wild when you go
Mhm.
into that room. So we thought we'd had a lot of great luck with the flashlights in the first cabin. So we had decided that we were going to do a mock card game, play some poker. And so the way I have the room set up here is you can see the tripwire going behind me, and we actually had the tripwire going up to into the second floor. And then we set up 3 flashlights, and we decided we were going to play poker with it. And so what was cool about this session, and I would have never anticipated it to do this, but they were responding intelligently,
Yeah.
and each flashlight was supposed to represent a person.
Yeah.
And so I know that, the flashlights are a controversial tool. But when they start responding intelligently and actually you could almost see the personality. So I'm going to go ahead
Yeah.
and start this. And so I was asking them basically what I was going to do at this point was and I'm going to actually not minimize the comments, but pull it up to where it's full screen there. But so what I was asking them if they were ready to play. And so I was going to deal out 5 cards. And so after I had dealt the 5 cards out, they were supposed to let me know if they wanted a hit, if they needed new cards. And so, and then by how many times they flashed would tell me how many cards that they wanted to change out. And then I would ask, who's the winner? And so it was kind of cool because the way they were responding, you could clearly see, and 2 out of 3 times,
Yeah.
there was a flashlight that picked who won.
Yeah.
The one that's lighting up right there, that one always had poor cards, but by looking at their personality, that one was clearly a bluffer.
Yeah.
And the one that was directly in front of me, every time that they won, they called it. And it was almost, when you watch the whole thing, you can really
Yeah.
truly see the personality, which is really wild.
Yeah. It
And
was. Yeah.
yeah, and so all 3 of those, I also had the obelisk sitting there. And so all 3 of those wanted another card, which I thought was kind of wild.
Yeah.
And so now I've already thought of ways that I'm going to modify this experiment because um you know, I was taking the card away and I didn't know which card. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I sabotaged them by taking the wrong
Right.
card away. But I've already kind of thought of ways that the spirit can tell us which card to take away and how many they want. And so
Mhm.
so what I've done, they all 2 of them said that they wanted a hit. And so I just asked who's the winner,
Yeah.
and that card lit up. So or
Yeah.
that one lit up. So I'm turning the cards over and we're looking to see who who won. And so it's just funny to me if it had been vibration or if it had been something causing those flashlights to go off. When Tiffany comes over, why are the other lights not going off? You know?
Right. Yeah.
And 2, it's like, how do they know if they don't know?
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting too because the cards were, and you commented on this during the episode, but the cards were face down and they
Yeah.
still knew what they had, which I also thought was interesting. And that goes back to the,
Mhm.
there just seemed to be all knowing much more than I think we
Yeah.
realize,
Mhm. And that one right there was the winner, and you could see the entire time. He was sitting there flashing his light like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it." And so it was really a cool experiment, and we tried to replicate this experiment in episode 5 or 4,
Yeah.
and we got no activity in the Confederate cabin.
Yeah.
And so we went through, and like I said, we played at least 3 hands. We even tried to pull the cheater in, and
Yeah.
the flashlight said it was okay that we could do that. But it's interesting that that 4th one that was supposed to be the cheater, it never lit up. It never
No.
wanted to play. And it was
No.
like, it's like, nope.
Maybe those were the guys that gutted him. They're
May
like,
have
sure.
been. May have
Yeah.
been. So I thought this was cool because we were asking, "Do you wanna play another hand?" And who wants to
Yeah.
play? And so there they go lighting up,
Yeah.
all 3 of them. And,
Yeah.
this location, it's been investigated a few times, but it's never been highlighted on a show or anything, and it's probably less than 7 or 8 times been investigated. So, um you could see the progression of how they were learning the tools and stuff. And I like
Yeah.
to do the flashlights anyways, especially for newer locations because they are just extremely simple to manipulate.
Yeah.
And we definitely got some really good responses from that.
You did. I absolutely love that. I was blown away by how they were responding so well. Like it was like
Yeah.
they were literally just sitting there, and I guess they were in some spiritual sense because it was actually happening. And that, I
Mhm.
mean, everyone should go back and watch that because that was
That
amazing.
was definitely my favorite because at this location, we were getting very intelligent responses. At one point, I had my battery drain when I was sitting in, and of course, everything started off wrong with this
Yeah.
investigation because StreamYard wasn't working. It wouldn't allow me to flip the cameras. We had somebody show up less than 2 minutes after we started filming.
Yeah.
I mean, it was anything and everything, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?" And so, but that led to such a great investigation. And my camera completely died. We were going to try to do another dual Estes method,
Yeah.
but I just happened to. I was showing while they were taking a break. I was showing the Native American relics, and I showed Booger Face, and apparently
Yeah.
Booger Face is not a very good relic. And so, especially when it comes to females, and as
Mm.
soon as I showed it and was telling the story, my battery just zapped in my phone.
Yeah.
So we were stuck with doing the Estes method up at the Burdine cabin, which the Burdine cabin is out there. We actually had to go by, in the essence of time, we had to go by golf cart. And so there's actual relics from the 1700s inside of this cabin. And so we did this Estes method. Now we were in the same room at that point, and we took time about, but we were hearing as Tiffany was, and there's an elemental that's supposed to be on this property, and we
Yeah.
believe we made contact with him.
Yeah.
But as she was responding, we were getting something marching around the cabin. We could hear it walking, and it was just like, this is creepy.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
super active. And then
Yeah.
she seemed to be corresponding with the elemental
Yeah.
because she was getting, I can't remember what it was, but she was getting weird sounds or something.
She was getting weird sounds and
Yeah.
heat. I think she was at least talking with 3 or 4 because at one point she had to say, "Everybody stop talking at once."
Yeah.
And there was this weird, creepy voice that kept coming over, but she was, and she was feeling heat. And this elemental that's in this location is a fire
That's
elemental.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one, I mean, we went 4.5 hours and we
Yeah.
could have gone much more. And
Definitely.
that place
Yeah.
was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the one that after you guys had interacted with what seemed to be an elemental, and it was responding to things that were being asked, but it wasn't necessarily like a happy, positive way. It was a little bit
No.
iffy, you know?
Mhm.
And that was the one where I was actually like concerned about you guys. I'm like, I hope
Yeah.
that, you know, they're going to be okay. Because it was just a little bit different and weird, you know?
It was. And I think that it's not accidental when you get a lot of battery drain. Everything at this point, when we were there in the Burdine house, it was killing our batteries.
Yeah.
It was killing the batteries in everything. And when we had to step away and I had to end the live because I had to go back to home base to end it, it drained my lighting that I had.
Yeah.
And so when we went back to gather up equipment, everything was dead. So it that one was a little unsettling and unnerving up there as all of that was happening, because even though there was 3 of us there, you really kind of got this feeling that it's like you feel alone, like more
Yeah.
alone, but
Isolated.
you
Yeah.
feel like something is there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that other than you're alone,
No, I
but not
understand that.
alone.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You're without humans, but not alone.
exactly.
Is that an area that's, because I'm not familiar with the area at all, but is that an area where there's like UFO sightings too, or?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I will check because that's something that I'm curious about. Actually, it's funny you do say that. I don't know if there's been sightings, but one of the petroglyphs, um, it's a very odd petroglyph, and
Mhm.
we were talking about it before the live, and of course, I'll be showing and talking about more of it whenever we're on. I said, "Is that alien?" I said, "Because those look like spaceships and all of this." And so this was drawn, I forget how far they dated this back to, but Brandon looked at me and he said, "That's my thought exactly."
Oh,
So, that wouldn't surprise me because there was definitely something that felt alien about some of the
yeah,
things that were experienced there.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're gonna have to plan a return
More to
visit for
come on
sure.
that. Oh, for sure, for sure. And
So,
so
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, I didn't know if you had another
I do.
clip. Okay.
I've got one more here, and
Okay.
that takes us into episode 5, which was the one that we just filmed last Tuesday. And so, what was cool about this one is this was in Rockcastle County, which was Renfro Valley. And so, Renfro Valley is like the Kentucky music headquarters here. Whoops, let me stop that and cue that up. It's located right there on the John Lear property, and John Lear he started the Renfro Valley Entertainment Center, and that's also where the Kentucky Country Music Hall of Fame is located, as well as the event venues. So I've seen a couple different concerts here. Rhonda Vincent, Ricky Skaggs, saw them with my dad. And so what we're doing at this one, so there's multiple buildings on the so this is right in the back of the John Lear home site, her or homestead. And so there is the old event venue, which was built in the 1930s when John Lear first established it. There was the newer event barn, which is where a lot of the big concerts and stuff are. And then there's this building that we were in, which was the administrative building. I think they called it Heritage Hall, I believe. And so this building, Heritage Hall, or the administrative building, was built in the 1950s. And Rockcastle County is actually known for its limestone mining as well as saltpeter mines. So there's a lot, when you get into Rockcastle County, there's a lot of limestone structures. And so there's some great limestone fireplaces that are here within this building here. So so here we go. We were up there in Heritage Hall, or the administration building, and we had actually just done an Estes session, and where I was sitting in this area where doors are known to open, shadow figures are known to be seen, disembodied voices are known to happen. And Chris was over at the end of the hall in the stairwell. Well, I decided I was going to do a rod session because I love using my dowsing rods, but I wanted to kind of change things up a little bit with this rod session. And normally when you're doing them, you hold the rods, crosses for yes, keep them open for no, ask directional questions, to point to things. And you're asking those questions. My idea in this one was to have the audience ask the questions, and I wanted to take the human element out of things and actually plug myself into my noise canceling headphones and play the spirit box. So I actually could not hear any of the questions as they were being asked. And it was, it was a little bit harder to show because we wanted to make sure that we showed the lights and had the light shining on the rods. And we also had the ovilus going at the same time to see if it responded to any. And I've not had the chance to go back and review this, but I actually heard it was a pretty incredible rod session. Because again, and if you do, when you're listening to this, you can actually hear the spirit box going. So I had it full blast. I could not hear those questions. And the rods are hard to control anyways for yes and no. But apparently there was some pretty spot on answers. And I was also calling out if I heard names or heard words on the spirit box. So it was kind of cool to combine the two and
I
see
loved
what kind of
that.
responses we were getting.
Because you literally have no way of knowing what's going on, and you've got two different activities. And I think that's a brilliant experiment to do. And I've got to get some dowsing rods. I say that every time I see someone use them because they're really amazing.
I love my rods. I work them better than I can a pendulum. I know a lot of people use pendulums. I've just always identified with the rods, and I'm trying to learn more about them because I know that I've had family that's used them to try to find water. And then also, to me, it's just been something that's always worked really well. And so anytime people are skeptical of those because if they've never used them, they don't understand just how hard they are to control. They're nearly impossible to control. And so I like to try to take that human element out. Sometimes I'll do them blindfolded. And that way I don't know if it's crossing yes or no. And then I actually really liked this because you're essentially a conduit and acting as a medium with the rods. And of course, they're using them to say yes and no. But to actually take that out subconsciously, I don't even know if a question is being asked. So for them to cross and to work like that is really, to me, it's a really cool thing if you can take that human element out.
I agree. And I love it too, because a spirit box, if a spirit, because sometimes it's hard because you have you get excited and you think of questions to ask. And a couple of us asked questions that weren't yes or no. But the spirit box, can kind of go ahead and answer that way as well. So
the spirit box, the ovilus. I mean, it's one of those things. because we don't know when we're asking these spirits. I often wonder if, and there's been times I've been in places that I have felt like the spirits don't see me. They're just in their own space. Other
Mhm.
times, and I think maybe they hear, and then
Yeah.
other times maybe they see and they don't hear what we're doing. I often wonder when we ask them to, okay, can you go touch that green light and turn it to red? I
Yeah.
don't know if they can see color. I mean, maybe they
Right.
only see in certain spectrums.
Yeah.
So I don't want to overwhelm them with so many things, but I like to give an option because we all have our own favorite tools that we identify with, and
Yeah.
that works for us. So I feel like it's the same way in the spirit world. And so just give them a variety, see what they interact with, and then you take that information and try to build on that experiment further by going back or trying something later on in the night to see if if that was truly some type of unexplained response.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I absolutely, like I said, I absolutely loved watching it. And in now reviewing this, I'm like, I'm excited all over again. And I can't wait to see what you do, with the episodes. Cause like you said, you investigated before and after.
Mhm.
And so it's like there's going to be more. And when you review it, just those couple of EVPs that you got, and I know there's more in there. There just has to be.
There has to be. I mean, people were hearing things. In fact, so I do a follow up every week on a Thursday night. And so we did a follow up this past Thursday night where we talked about, I'm kind of behind on those. We
Yeah.
talked about Clover Hill Village that was in Appomattox. And I had Tiffany on, and then I also had Daryl from Clover Hill. And as we were sitting there, we were inside of a church. We had done the investigation inside there. And just as I had pulled that up, we see a shadow just completely just move across the room that we
Wow.
didn't see in the moment, and we saw when we were reviewing that.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so it was a really neat capture, and we also did a 2-point perspective where
Mhm.
we had one camera facing one way and another facing another. So,
I love that.
I'm really learning a lot from this that I'm telling you, I am definitely I want to keep this momentum going. We are going to go back to rugby. I don't know if that'll be Wednesday night or Thursday night. We're going to go and do a little
Oh,
more investigating there. Yeah, just because we did have internet issues.
yeah.
So we want to go back and do that one again. So we're going to have 6 episodes for season 6. So even though we had the finale, we are going to do that.
Oh, is that
Um,
going to be live
it will be live.
this
Yes.
Wednesday?
I'm thinking so. I'm thinking it'll
Oh,
probably be Wednesday night, as long as the schedule permits. Um, I would do tomorrow night, but I'm gonna wait and kind of play it by ear. So either tomorrow or Wednesday night.
okay.
And then I'm probably gonna do at least 1 or 2 lives every month.
Oh, wow.
Just to of different locations. They won't be as big. They'll probably be a little bit more not so much localized, but more stories people haven't heard of before.
Yeah.
And so I really want to keep that momentum going. I enjoyed it so much. I'll still do the produced episodes at some point, but I'm hoping that we can keep this interaction going and do more of these live investigations. And maybe they won't even be as long. They may just be an hour, but we'll
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
play that by ear. And so, yeah, I'm going to try
Mm.
to do that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. Well, I had a couple of questions for you, so
Sure.
I don't want to keep you too long, but I really appreciate you sharing those clips with me and coming on. I'm going to say that right now. But let me get to my questions really
Okay.
quick. Let's see. So I don't know if you told me or not, but I don't think so. When did you start riding your motorcycle, and then how did it help you in the paranormal?
Oh, that's a great question. So I started riding about 20 years ago, I guess. And it's one of those things. It's really helped me because I kind of model my investigation style the same way that I'm model my motorcycle riding. I feel like you have to for one, it really centers and grounds me whenever I'm doing an investigation. It also helps me as far as planning on these, because we did have, the lives and everything, did them a little bit different. I had more equipment, but I usually try to plan the investigation in the sense of what I can pack there on the motorcycle, or if I've got a camera person, I'll have them carry the equipment. But it also, I feel like when you're riding, you have to be very aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
It's the same way when you're investigating. You have to be aware and be focused and be grounded, because
Yeah.
if you go in and you're not paying attention, things can happen that's unexpected. And you have
Yeah.
to, on a motorcycle, really anticipate what's ahead and be very defensive about it. So I think that it's kind of the same way when you're investigating, and account for, road conditions and weather, and you don't know what's around that curve. And so it's the same with the investigation. So I really kind of think that the two parallel each other,
Yeah.
and have really helped me to be a better investigator just from being a motorcyclist.
Yeah. So one kind of led to the other in a way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, okay. So what have you learned from a spirit during communication? So have you ever, on any investigation ever, is there something that you like took home with you about the spirit world that like really stands out to you?
I have found a lot of the time, I think I'm always the most amazed when they're intelligent and aware. And one of the things that I have taken home when I've started to really ask in-depth questions about where they are, um, on 2 occasions I've had this happen. One time, I got back when I started asking questions about, I don't wanna say necessarily heaven or hell, but about where they are.
Right.
Um, I was told they couldn't tell me and that there are rules.
Huh.
And so, I don't know if there's rules that they have to abide by in what they can tell, or if they're telling me that. So,
Huh.
it's kind of opened my eyes a little bit on some of that, and I always keep that in the back of my mind whenever I'm investigating and
Yeah.
asking those type of questions.
Yeah. That's a great like to ask every location, what are these rules? Are these rules for me? Are these rules for
Mhm.
you? I love that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, I want to know, did you have any weird dreams while you were filming, before, after, anything that kind of relates to your investigation?
You know, um, it's kind of interesting on a couple of the different ones, especially the ones that I was traveling from. And so I found on the 2 that, I traveled and spent the night at, because at Appomattox, I went the day before, and then, of course, stayed and came back the next day. Same way there in South Carolina. I don't recall, I was so tired, I don't
Yeah.
recall dreaming that as soon as I hit the bed, I was out and almost like I passed out.
Yeah.
I did have, I'm trying to remember the dream. I remember I had an odd dream the night that I came back from Heritage Hills, and I had an odd dream when I came back from, the last one in Rockcastle County. Yeah.
Huh.
I don't recall the dream relating to the location. It was just very vivid, and I don't know if I would think that they were because I was tired, because those other locations I was extremely tired from?
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, those were probably, and I don't recall dreaming after rugby.
Huh. Well, I wonder if maybe because you're opening yourself up to the paranormal, you're like opening up, your third eye,
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff, that your dreaming doesn't just become more vivid just because you're kind of open, so you're receiving more and remembering more, unless you're super tired.
Very, very possible, for
Hmm.
sure.
Oh, I feel like you used to do sketches sometimes at haunted
Mhm.
locations. Do you ever still do that, or?
I do, I do. That's one of the things I absolutely love doing. So I do draw the locations that I go to. Those drawings, I typically do those either before I go or after I go, of the actual location. But this is something that I'm hoping to get back into more. because when I go, sometimes I do see and sense things when I go to a location. And so I started I've got to see what the location's like. If it's a dark location, I won't do it because I feel it I'm too open at that point. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like I liken it to automatic writing when people
Mhm.
go in there. I call it subconscious sketching.
Yeah.
And so I'll set tools out and then I'll sit down and I'll explain what I'm doing. I tell the spirits that I'm wanting to draw someone or something that I'm able to identify. And if they would, would please show me somebody or something that I can go back and research later on. Somebody that is important or something that is important to them.
Yeah.
And so when I start to see things, I never see a full being. I always see features. And so I try to draw those. And so I started confirming it. Like if I know on one that I was drawing, I couldn't see hair. And so I asked the question, "Are you bald?" And of course, nothing, the K2s, the EDI, nothing was lighting up. And so finally I said, "Am I not seeing your hair because you're wearing a hat?" And I remember some of the tools started lighting up.
Oh.
So then I just start drawing a hat and I don't know what it looks like, when I'm doing
Yeah.
it. And so by the time when I'm done, I'm basing it on the confirmation of the tools.
Huh.
And so I don't even know most of the time if I'm drawing a male or a female until I'm close to getting done. And I've done 5 at this point, and I've actually been able to match up 3 of the 5 that I
Ooh.
drew. And
Yeah.
one of them, I even drew a person that I met, the very next day. So he was actually
Oh,
alive,
yeah.
and he was the caretaker of the
Wow.
location. So, in a long-winded sort of way, yes, I do like to draw at the locations because most of the time I'm going in and I'm filming for an episode. I haven't done it as much, but it's something that I want to learn more about because I feel like it's something that needs to grow.
Mhm.
And I also feel like it's something that's a very special form of communication between myself and the spirits.
Yeah.
And so, that is one of those things, if I have the time to do it and feel so compelled,
Right.
I'll definitely, do that because it has yielded some very interesting results.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fascinated by that. I wish that I could draw like that because I think that I would just go to places and just draw, because
Yeah.
what a way to like get that information and you don't even know what it's going to be until it's done. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and because sometimes I'll have a preconceived notion, like the one where
Right.
I drew the guy who's the caretaker of the location. I thought I was going to be drawing one of the slaves that was there because I drew it in the winter slave kitchen. And then as I'm going, and it's like, well, this is a man because he's got a beard.
Yeah.
And so as I'm drawing it, um, and I'm asking this stuff, it's like, okay, well, maybe he's a slave trader or somebody who was a Confederate soldier or even a Union soldier that visited this location.
Right.
And the more I go through, by the time I was done, I was like, you know, I'm not really sure who this could be. And so the next night when I was there, the guy that I was investigating with, he was like, "I need you to meet someone." And he said, "And bring your sketchbook." So we were setting up for the second night. And so I go around the corner and I literally met the guy that I drew all the way down to the same beard, the same eyes, and then he was wearing the same floppy hat.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not quite sure what this means, but when I found out who he was, it's like, well, that just makes sense. The spirits
Yeah.
have really connected with this guy,
Right.
and so
Yeah,
they're
he was
describing
important
this
to
guy.
them. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Oh, and that
absolutely.
must have been amazing for him to
It
to
was.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh
he's
my gosh.
talked about that on multiple occasions because that was how we met, and then we happened to be speaking at the same convention, and I was taught it was a psychic convention, and I was talking about it, and, when I showed it and the picture that the guy took of me, him, and the drawing, I mean, we all just look like we're, like, shocked and stunned, but
Yeah.
amazed at the same time,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I don't it was a very, I think for him, it was just like it confirmed that connection that he knew he
Yeah.
had with the spirits at that location. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's so amazing. Okay. Let's see. I may have already asked you this question. Let's see. Does your tool of choice change with each investigation? And then how was it having others pick how you would investigate? So, like, when you go out and investigate, do you have like the same tools you always go to, or do you purposely say, I want to try something new? Because I always like to try something new, but it's also like you kind of have your things that work. And so, like, how do you divide up doing that?
Well, I have my bag of my go-to ones that I like using. And so I always make sure I have that with me. But one of the things when I go to a location is if I have the ability to do so, I like to really just, I call it letting the location settle and kind of acclimate to me and me to the
Mhm.
location. So a lot of the time I go in and just kind of talk, announce who I am, what I'm doing, and really see what the location, how it speaks to me. And a lot of the time I find that I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to take, throw down my tripwire or what have you. But I find when I do that or have in my mind, a lot of the time it's like, no, you need to maybe start with the dowsing rods. So a lot of the time that changes, but I actually really liked it when the people were telling me what to do because I don't know where this is coming from. What is causing the people to direct me in that direction? Is it because something they want to see? Is it something that calls to them because that's a
Yeah.
tool that they like? And honestly, a lot of the time, I think that validation of like when something works in one place and I try it in another and it doesn't work, to me, I feel like that actually validates
Yeah.
the
Oh,
time that it
definitely.
worked before. Because if it worked
Oh,
every
yeah.
time,
Then, yeah.
yeah, you'd have to wonder. So
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
I
I
do
agree
have
with
my
that 100%.
go-tos. Yeah, I do have my go-tos, but, I usually tend to let the location kinda tell me. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So it's kind of like an intuitive thing.
Mhm.
You have the mindset, but then something you just know, nope, I'm going to do this. I love
Yeah.
that. Let's see. I have one last question. How did the spirits interact during the live versus when you were not live, before, after? I think I might have asked you that. So that's something you're going to tell us about.
Yeah, so I'll definitely show that because I've got some theories on why that could be. Because again, sometimes I think it was a little bit of the collective energy.
Yeah.
And it may have been my energy reacting to everyone else's excitement and energy. It
Yeah.
depended on the location. There were several times that the activity was definitely more when we were live. Maybe not so much in every location. I've still got to go back and look at my static cameras because I'm interested to see if there were things happening at some of these other buildings when we did certain things. Because I have had that happen on investigations.
Yeah.
There was 2 different occasions where things were a little more active, after the live or before the live, whichever location that I was at, and I sometimes think some of that is because you do have the camera on and,
Yeah.
sometimes things don't happen when the
Yes.
cameras are
Oh boy,
on.
that's the truth.
Mhm.
So do you think that maybe doing the live kind of like, for a lack of a better term, like kind of warmed up the spirits in the location? Like afterwards, it was still like, like radiating.
I think so. I think so. And it was like a lot of places too. There was 2 places that I couldn't go on after the
Yeah.
live. Like I literally felt like my battery was drained and
Yeah.
I had to wait a little bit of time for my batteries on my equipment and then also me personally wait on those batteries to charge. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I feel like in most of the instances I think it kind of ramped them up and really just kinda yeah, I think ramping them up is probably the best way to describe it
Yeah.
or energize them
Yeah.
because there were times it really, the other time I did a live, and that was at the Sunset Hill house, and that was during my season 1. I did a season finale there at that house, and on season 2, we showed it on season 2, but we actually did it mid-year, and it was supposed to really just be people telling me where to put these cameras that I was going to set up overnight. And it ended up being an hour and a half live, and it was so active. And so I think in a lot of those instances that lives tend to, if you do them right, I think they tend
Right.
to ramp
Yeah.
everything up. Mhm.
Huh. It's really fascinating. It's like a whole new way of doing things. It's just like I notice people are just starting to do this kind of thing within the last
Yes.
maybe year or two, really,
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's exciting to see where that goes, with the whole community, really, and what that does. But so do you want to share like where people can find you? I'll put all links below too, but just kind of like close us out with that information.
Sure, sure. And again, thank you for having me on. It's been so cool to sit and discuss this because, you were there for every episode and you were there the whole time for all
Yeah.
these episodes. So I absolutely can't thank you enough for that and for your support and getting the word out. But people can go back, they can binge watch all 6 seasons on the Ghost Biker Exploration Facebook page and on the Ghost Biker Explorations YouTube channel, and then www.ghostbikerexplorations.com. And so they can watch all of that. I always do a live Thursday night show at 9 p.m. Eastern time where if we're not reviewing the past seasons, I like to have different authors, podcasters, writers, people who are doing things in the paranormal community. So we're always there every Thursday night. But again, hoping to do more lives coming up here in the future. And so you'll be able to watch anything live that I do both on the Ghost Biker Explorations Facebook or YouTube channel.